is Coda Territory Sports, sponsored by the Box Event Center.
Good evening, everybody. The AA Boys State Basketball Tournament tips off tomorrow at the Monument. In the first game of the day, Spearfish will try to knock off top-seeded Sioux Falls Lincoln. The Spartans head into the game with a 14-7 record, while the Patriots check in at 20-1. Tip-off is at noon tomorrow at the Summit Arena. The Class A Boys State Basketball Tournament tips off tomorrow in Sioux Falls. For the first time in school history, the Hill City Boys have qualified for state. The 7-seeded Rangers head east with a 19-4 record and will take on 2nd-seeded Hamlin in the opening round at 5 o'clock our time. The Rapid City Christian boys also earned a spot at the Class A state tourney. The 3rd-seeded Comets will square off with Clark-Willow Lake around 6:45 our time tomorrow night. Cal Courtney's bunch enters the state tourney with an impressive 20-2 record. Now, the Class B Boys State Basketball Tournament tips off tomorrow in Aberdeen. In the first game of the day, Lyman squares off with a top-seeded Castlewood around 12:45 our time tomorrow. Wall hits the court to take on Wessington Springs. The 17-6 Eagles are making just their second trip to state in school history. Now, in the first game of the evening session, 2nd-seeded Del Rapids St. Mary's squares off with Aberdeen Christian. Freeman will also match up with Viborg Hurley. The Rush continued its hot streak last week, sweeping 3 games from Iowa. Rapid City has now won 15 of its last 18 and is back on home ice this weekend for 3 big games against Wichita. Now, the Rush heads into the series 10 points back of the Thunder for the final playoff spot in the Mountain Division. The South Dakota State women's basketball team is gearing up for another trip to the NCAA tournament. The 10th-seeded Jackrabbits will face 7th-seeded Oklahoma State Saturday afternoon in Storrs, Connecticut. South Dakota State heads east with an impressive 29-3 record. The Cowgirls enter the showdown with a 25-6 mark. Now, if the Jacks can get past Oklahoma State, they would face the winner of the game between 2nd-seeded UConn and 15th-seeded Arkansas State. And while it may be a long trip, the team is excited to play in a hotbed of women's basketball.
UConn is just a dynasty of basketball, and they have a fellow Minnesotan in Paige Beckers there. So hopefully we'll get to really take in and enjoy the experience of being in Storrs, Connecticut, and getting to play where UConn does play and where people love and respect women's basketball.
I think we were all getting a little, waiting for it, trying to be as patient as we could to wait for our name to be called. But, once we got called, we were excited to kind of see who we matched up against.
I thought we could be anywhere between 7 and 10, and this is just one of those years where that group of schools was just so tight with net rankings, wins and losses, quality wins. There were just so many teams at that level. So there really isn't much difference between them. Not comfortable with it. Now we got to go out there and do our best with it.
Should be exciting. Saturday afternoon, South Dakota State women taking on Oklahoma State in the NCAA tournament. And if they can win that game, they likely would get a matchup with the perennial power from UConn. One other note from high school basketball, Pine Ridge's Marvin Richard III has received his first Division I offer from the University of South Dakota. Of course, Marvin, a very talented scorer, averaged 35 points per game this season and set the Class A single-game scoring record with 62 points. So some exciting news for Marvin Richard III. Major League Baseball this morning, regular season game over in Japan. The Dodgers make it 2 in a row over the Cubs as they win by the score of 6-3. So Boys State basketball gets going tomorrow. AA tournament over at the Monument should be fun. You can see Spearfish taking on Sioux Falls Lincoln at noon tomorrow, and keep it tuned here for all your state basketball scores and highlights. Going to be a fun weekend. Well, that's going to do it for sports. We'll be right back after this short timeout.